October 22nd, 2024, and welcome back to the week that was, as we will be taking a look at the team and individual statistics from the 15 games across week 7 in the NFL, including the Super Bowl 58 rematch between the Chiefs and Niners, the Patriots squaring off with the Jaguars in London, Sunday Night Football featuring the Jets and Steelers, and another Monday night doubleheader featuring the Ravens and Buccaneers and the Chargers at the Cardinals. Among the 15 games we will be taking a look at. Plus, as we go along in this review, I will be telling you how I did with my picks, both straight up and against the spread. And at the end of the recap, we'll run down the Week 8 power rankings. So make sure you stay tuned for those. Alright, before we begin, like, comment, and subscribe to my channel, ring the bell, and get notified every time I go live. And with that, let's dive into the week that was, week number 7 of the 2024 season, and we're going to start off with Thursday Night Football, as Sean Payton's return to New Orleans ends up being successful, as his Denver Broncos rout the New Orleans Saints 33-10. So the Broncos are back above 500 at 4-3. The Saints, meanwhile, have dropped 5 straight games after a 2-0 start. They are now 2-5. Let's start with individual numbers for the Denver Broncos. Bo Nix was 16 of 26 for 164 yards with no touchdowns or interceptions and a 79.6 QB rating, plus 10 rushes for 75 yards. Leading the ground attack for Denver was Javonte Williams, 14 carries, 88 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Troy Franklin would lead the Broncos receivers with 5 catches, 50 yards on 6 targets. Lucas Kroll, 3 catches, 41 yards on 4 targets. And in addition to his running numbers, Javonte Williams added 3 catches for 23 yards on 3 targets. Will Lutz was 4 for 4 on field goals. His long was 52. And 3 for 3 on extra points. Riley Dixon had 3 punts averaging 43. His long was 50 with 1 inside the 20-yard line. Leaders on the Broncos defense includes Levi Wallace with 8 total tackles, including 7 solo. Justin Sternad, 9 tackles and a sack. Cody Barton finished with 8 total tackles, a sack, a forced fumble, and a pass defensed. Jaquan McMillan had 6 solo tackles, a sack, and a forced fumble. Riley Moss closed the game with 6 total tackles. And Brandon Jones had 5 total tackles for the Broncos. For the Saints, Spencer Rattler started the game. He was 25 of 35 for 172 yards with no touchdowns, no interceptions, and an 82.1 QB rating. Jake Haener, this is the number 3 quarterback for the Saints. He was 3 for 4 for 38 yards and a touchdown and a QB rating of 143.8. Rattler also added 5 rushes for 34 yards. Kendre Miller had 6 rushes, 36 yards. Jamal Williams, 3 for 17. And Alvin Kamara was held to 7 carries, 10 yards, plus 6 catches for 14 on 7 targets. Cedric Wilson led the New Orleans receivers with 6 catches, 57 yards, and a touchdown on 7 targets. Mason Tipton, 6 catches, 45 yards on 9 targets. Foster Moreau, 2 catches for 38 yards on 2 targets. Bub Means, 3 catches, 37 yards on 5 targets. And Jawan Johnson, 3 grabs, 18 yards on 6 targets. Blake Grupe was 1 for 1 on field goals. Long was 35 and 1 for 1 on extra points. Matthew Hayball had 6 punts, averaging 44.5. Long punt was 62, with 1 touchback and 3 inside the 20. Alontae Taylor had 7 tackles and a pass defense. Demario Douglas also finished with 7 tackles. Alright, my computer is acting slow today. Now is not the time for you to act up here, Chromebook. Alright, we're back into the stats. The leading tackler on this Saints defense, if they'll pull up his name, is Jordan Howden. He had 8 total tackles. Marshawn Lattimore had 4 solo tackles. Paulson Adebo had 6 total tackles. He, of course, left this game with an injury in the second quarter and is out for the season. Tyrann Mathieu had 5 solo tackles. And Carl Granderson closed the night with 3 tackles for the Saints, all solo tackles. For rush yards favored the Broncos, 225 to 97. Denver had 22 first downs to 15 for New Orleans. The Broncos finished 4 of 11 on third down, while the Saints were 5 of 17 on third down and 3 of 4 on fourth down. The Broncos had 7 penalties for 47 yards with no sacks taken, 1 lost fumble, no interceptions thrown, and 3 punts. The Saints had 5 penalties for 35 yards, 6 sacks taken for 36, 2 lost fumbles, no interceptions, and 6 punts. Time of possession was 33 minutes 16 seconds for the Denver Broncos, 26 minutes 44 seconds for the New Orleans Saints. Closing line was Denver minus 2.5, and the over-under is 37. I took the Broncos both straight up and against the spread, making me 1-0 this week to start week number 7. So again, the Broncos defeat the Saints 33-10 to move to 4-3, while the Saints have dropped 5 straight games and are now 2-5. On to London for the Jacksonville Jaguars, who defeated the New England Patriots 32-16, and that's all in thanks large part to that 22-point second quarter, which really put this game away. The Jaguars snap their losing streak and go to 2-5, while the Patriots, who haven't won since week 1, now sit at 1-6. Individual numbers for the Jaguars will start with Trevor Lawrence. 15 of 20, 193 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, and a 121.5 QB rating. Tank Bigsby was the star of this Jaguar rush offense. 26 carries, 118 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Brian Thomas led the Jacksonville receivers. 5 catches, 89 yards, and a touchdown on 5 targets, plus 2 rushes for 2 yards. Evan Ingram, 5 for 35 yards on 5 targets. Dearness Johnson had 3 catches, 32 yards on 4 targets. Christian Kirk and Gabe Davis, each with a catch in the game. Kirk for 24 yards, Davis for 13. Cam Little was 1 for 1 on field goals. Long was 21, 3 for 3 on extra points. Logan Cook, 2 punts averaging 35 yards. Long was 38, both punts inside the 20-yard line. Ventrell Miller had 10 total tackles for the Jags. Devin Lloyd had 11 total tackles plus a sack. Yasir Abdullah, 3 solo tackles. Andre Sisco, 5 total tackles. Both had a pass defense in the game. Darnell Savage, 3 total tackles. Trayvon Walker had 3 tackles plus a sack. And Jeremiah Ledbetter had 2 solo tackles for the Jaguars. For the New England Patriots, another good game for Drake May. 26 of 37 for 276 yards with 2 touchdowns and no interceptions, and a 109.7 QB rating, plus 3 rushes for 18 yards. And not much to talk about with this New England ground attack. Ramondre Stevenson was held to 18 yards on 7 carries. Hunter Henry was probably the only bright spot on this Patriots offense on Sunday morning. He had 8 catches, 92 yards on 9 targets. Jermichael Hasty, 5 catches, 49 yards, and a touchdown on 5 tackles, or rather 5 targets. Kayshon Boutte, 1 catch, 33 yards on 2 targets. Austin Hooper, 4 for 32 on 5 targets. And KJ Osborne, 2 catches, 26 yards, and a touchdown on 3 targets. Joey Sly, 1 for 1 on field goals. Long was 41, and 1 for 1 on extra points. Bryce Baringer, 4 punts averaging 52.3. Long punt was 66 with 3 punts inside the 20-yard line. Kyle Duggar led the Patriots defense with 11 tackles and a pass defense. Anthony Jennings, 7 total tackles, including 6 solo tackles. Christian Ellis with 9 tackles total. Jacqueline Roy, 5 tackles. Sorry. And then you have 5 total tackles for both Marte Mapu and Christian Gonzalez. And Keon White, he had 4 total tackles for the Patriots. Total yards, 364 for Jacksonville, 295 for New England. The Patriots 257 passing yards versus 193 for the Jaguars, but Jacksonville outgained New England running the football, 171 rush yards to 38. The Jaguars had 23 first downs versus 17 for the Pats. New England was 6 of 12 on third down, Jacksonville 6 of 10, both 0 for 1 on fourth down. 7 penalties, 35 yards for the Patriots, 2 sacks taken for 19, no lost fumbles, no interceptions, and 4 punts. 4 penalties, 24 yards for the Jaguars, no sacks taken, no lost fumbles, no interceptions, and only 2 punts. Time of possession, Jacksonville 33 minutes 15 seconds, New England 26 minutes and 45 seconds. Closing line was Jacksonville -7. Over-under was 42.5. I took the Jaguars straight up, but took the Patriots with the points, so I split both of those, making me 2-0 straight up and 1-1 against the point spread. Now it's a Sunday afternoon, and we'll start with the Battle of Ohio as the Cincinnati Bengals beat the Cleveland Browns 21-14, and there's some big news here about Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson. More on that shortly. We'll start with individual numbers for the Bengals. Joe Burrow, 15 of 25, 181 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a 108.9 QB rating. He ran the ball 3 times, but for -3 yards. Chase Brown, 15 rushes, 44 yards to lead the ground attack. T. Higgins, 4 catches, 82 yards, and a touchdown on 8 targets. And Jamar Chase, 5 for 55 and a touchdown on 6 targets, leading the Bengals receivers. Zach Moss, 3 catches, 33 yards on 3 targets. And Chase Brown added 2 grabs for 9 on 2 targets. Evan McPherson was 0 for 1 on field goals, 3 for 3 on extra points. Ryan Reckow, 8 punts, averaging 44.3. Long was 58. 4 of his 8 punts landed inside the 20-yard line. Jermaine Pratt led Cincy's defense with 13 total tackles, including 10 solo. Logan Wilson with 10 total tackles. Cam Taylor-Britt, 7 total tackles. Mike Hilton closed the day with 5 tackles. Geno Stone, 7 total tackles, 1 pass defense, and an interception. Joseph Osai, he had 4 total tackles. DJ Turner, 4 total tackles and a pass defense. Jordan Battle, 3 tackles. Sam Hubbard with 3 tackles, a sack, a forced fumble, a pass defense, and an interception. And Trey Hendrickson with 3 total tackles, 2 sacks, and a pass defense. And Sheldon Rankins back in the Bengals lineup. He had 3 total tackles and a sack. For the host Cleveland Browns, who used 3 quarterbacks in this game, Deshaun Watson started and was 15 of 17 for 128 with no touchdowns or interceptions and a QB rating of 98. Now the big news around Watson, he got injured. And it's not showing what happened. But yeah, he did get injured. And the Browns fans, as he was being carted off the field, chanted, "You deserve it." I think that was pretty messed up on the part of the Browns fans. I mean, yeah, we know Deshaun Watson's not good. But to rub it in his face, telling him he deserves it right after he gets hurt and is now out for the season, that's just a bad look on your team. So Watson departs with that injury, and then Dorian Thompson-Robinson would come in. He was 11 for 24 for 82 yards with 2 interceptions and a 19.8 QB rating. He would then be replaced with Jameis Winston, who went 5 of 11 for 67 yards and a touchdown with no interceptions and a passer rating of 95.6. Alright, my computer is not doing what it's supposed to. Meanwhile, Thompson-Robinson did lead the Browns in rushing. 3 carries, 44 yards. Nick Chubb, who made his 2024 debut playing in his first game in more than a year, was held to 11 rushes, 22 yards, but he did score a touchdown. Cedric Tillman led the Cleveland receivers with 8 catches, 81 yards on 12 targets. David Njoku, 10 for 76 and a touchdown on 14 targets. Jordan Atkins, 4 catches, 42 yards on 4 targets. And Elijah Moore had 6 catches, 41 yards on 7 targets. Now I want to get back to the Watson injury and tell you what happened with him. Alright, he tore his Achilles and is now out for the season. So yeah, that's a bad break for the Cleveland Browns. Dustin Hopkins 0 for 1 on field goals, 0 for 1 on extra points. Corey Bojorquez with 7 punts, averaging 50.7, his longest 58 with 3 inside the 20-yard line. Defensively for the Cleveland Browns, Martin Emerson has 6 total tackles and 2 passes defensed. Grant Delpit had 5 solo tackles. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah had 7 total tackles. Myles Garrett had just 4 solo tackles. Jordan Hicks 5 total tackles, and Denzel Ward with 3 solo tackles and 2 passes defensed for Cleveland. Total yards 336 for the Browns and 223 for the Bengals. So this marks the first time all season that the Browns offense racked up at least 300 yards in a game. The Browns outgained the Bengals through the air 259 to 164 and on the ground 77 to 59. Cleveland had 18 first downs, Cincinnati had 12. Bengals were 2 of 13 on third downs, which is not good, and 0 for 1 on fourth down. Cleveland was pretty good. They were 8 of 19 on third down and 1 for 2 on fourth down. The Bengals finished with 3 penalties, 37 yards, 3 sacks taken for 17, no lost fumbles, no interceptions, and 8 punts. While the Browns had 10 penalties for 80 yards. You may point to that stat and say that's probably the reason they lost. 4 sacks taken for 18 yards, no lost fumbles, 2 interceptions, and 7 punts. Cleveland won the time of possession battle at 34 minutes 29 seconds, while the Bengals finished with 25 minutes and 31 seconds. Closing line was Cincinnati -5, over under set at 42 and a half rather. I picked the Bengals straight up, but I took Cleveland with the points, and that was kind of a bad decision, as I'm now 3-0 straight up and 1-2 ATS through 3 games. Moving on to our first game of the week, battle for first place in the NFC North, won by the Detroit Lions as they outlasted the Minnesota Vikings 31-29, as both teams are now 5-1. And in the process, Minnesota drops from the ranks of the unbeaten. We'll begin with individual numbers for the Detroit Lions. Jared Goff, 22 of 25, 280 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, QB rating of 140. And I think he has hit 81% of his passes over his last 3 or 4 games. Something ridiculous, but he's been very accurate. Jahmyr Gibbs led the Lions rushers, 15 carries, 116 yards, and 2 touchdowns rushing, plus 4 receptions and 44 yards on 4 targets. David Montgomery limited to 9 carries, 31 yards, but also had 3 catches for 39 on 4 targets. Another good game for Amon-Ra St. Brown. 8 catches, 112 yards, and a touchdown on 8 targets. And Khalif Raymond, 3 for 39 on 4 targets, plus touchdown. Jake Bates, 1 for 1 on field goals, long was 44, and that just so happened to be the game winner. And 4 for 4 on extra points. Jack Fox, 4 punts, averaging 54.8 yards, long was 63 with 1 touchback and a punt inside the 20-yard line. Leading the Lions defense is Alex Anzalone. He had 8 total tackles. Kirby Joseph had 7 total tackles. Both Malcolm Rodriguez and Jack Campbell finished with 7 total tackles and a sack each. Trevor Nowalski had 5 total tackles and a sack. Brian Branch, 4 solo tackles, 2 passes defensed, and an interception. And Josh Pascal had 4 total tackles and a sack for the Lions. For the Minnesota Vikings, Sam Darnold, 22 of 27, 259 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, QB rating of 103.6, plus 4 rushes for 39 yards. Aaron Jones had 14 rushes, 93 yards, and a touchdown to pave the way for the Vikings' ground attack. Jones also added 3 catches for 23 yards on 3 targets. Justin Jefferson, 7 grabs, 81 yards, and a touchdown on 8 targets. Jalen Naylor, 4 catches, 76 yards on 5 targets. Jordan Addison had 3 catches, 66 yards on 4 targets for Minnesota. Will Reichert, 3 for 3 on field goals, long was 57, and 2 for 2 on extra points. Meanwhile, Ryan Wright closes with 3 punts, averaging 48.3. Long punt was 60, with 1 inside the 20-yard line. Andrew Van Ginkel had a pretty good game for the Vikings defense. 7 total tackles, 2 sacks, and a forced fumble. Joshua Metellus, 8 total tackles and a forced fumble. Ivan Pace Jr., 10 total tackles, including 7 assisted tackles, plus a sack. Stephon Gilmore, 4 tackles in the game. Harrison Smith with 7. Cameron Bynum had 5 tackles. Jonathan Grenard, 4 total tackles, a sack, and a forced fumble. And further down the depth chart, you've got Jonathan Bullard, who finished with 4 total tackles and 2 passes defensed. Total yards nearly split even, 391 for Detroit, 383 for Minnesota. Passing yards and rushing yards both favored the Lions. Passing was 247 to 244 Detroit, and 144 to 139 rushing for Detroit. The Lions had 19 first downs, the Vikings 16. Both teams finished 4 of 10 on third down. The Lions were 0 for 1 on fourth down. 8 penalties, 49 yards for the Detroit Lions, 4 sacks taken for 33, 1 lost fumble, no interceptions, and 4 punts. 8 penalties, 59 yards for the Minnesota Vikings, 4 sacks taken for 15, no lost fumbles, 1 interception, and 3 punts. Time of possession, 30 minutes, 57 seconds for the Vikings to 29 minutes and 3 seconds for the Lions. Closing line was Minnesota minus 1.5, and the over-under was 49.5. I ended up taking the Vikings to win and to cover, and that kind of cost me because that's my first straight-up loss of the week. 3-1 is my record, and 1-3 ATs. Yeah, I had a pretty rough week picking these games versus the point spread, as you'll see going through these games. Okay, the Green Bay Packers got a late field goal and they defeated the Houston Texans at Lambeau Field 24-22. As both teams are now 5-2 on the 2024 season. Okay, we'll begin with individual numbers for the Packers. Jordan Love, 24 of 33, 220 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. QB rating is 95.5. Josh Jacobs, 12 rushes, 76 yards, 5 catches, 16 yards, and a receiving touchdown on 5 targets. Romeo Doubs led the way for the Green Bay receivers, 8 for 94 on 10 targets. Dontavian Wicks, 3 for 48 and a touchdown on 6 targets. Tyler Kraft, 3 for 33 and a touchdown on 4 targets. Brandon McManus, who they signed last week, is 1 for 1 on field goals. Long was 45. And 3 for 3 on extra points. That's Brandon McManus, on that one. Daniel Whelan, 5 punts, averaging 56.8, long was 66. Alright. Evan Williams had 9 total tackles. Eric Wilson low-key had a great day. 6 solo tackles, 2 sacks, and a pass defense. Xavier McKinney, 6 total tackles and a sack. Javon Bullard, 4 total tackles. Jair Alexander with 3 solo tackles. Keyshawn Nixon, 5 total tackles. Rashawn Gary, 5 total tackles and a sack for the Green Bay Packers. And for the Houston Texans, probably one of the worst games in the short career of C.J. Stroud. 10 of 21, 86 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, 58.8 QB rating. Plus 5 rushes for 19 yards. Joe Mixon was the star of this running game, as always. 25 rushes, 115 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Plus 2 catches, 9 yards on 3 targets. Pretty quiet day for the Houston receivers. Dalton Schultz, 1 catch, 28 yards on 2 targets. Stephon Diggs, 5 for 23 on 7 targets. And that's pretty much all we have to talk about there. Ka'imi Fairbairn, 3 for 3 on field goals. Long was 52, 1 for 1 on extra points. Tommy Townsend, 6 punts averaging 51.2. Long was 66. 1 touchback and 4 inside the 20. Defensively, D'Angelo Ross had 8 total tackles. Neville Hewitt had 9 total tackles, 2 passes defensed, and an interception. Derek Stingley finished with 6 solo tackles and a pass defensed. Then you have Jake Hansen with 7 total tackles. Tim Settle Jr. with 2 solo tackles, or rather 4 solo tackles, and a sack. And Petrie, 3 solo tackles and a pass defensed. Lorenzo Fatukowski, 2 solo tackles, and Danielle Hunter, 2 tackles and a sack. Not a lot of offense to speak of in this game, even though they did score 46 combined points. The Packers had 277 yards of offense to 187 for the Texans. Passing yards edge goes to Green Bay, 195 to 55. Rush yards edge goes to Houston, 142 to 82. The Packers had 18 first downs versus 15 for the Texans. Houston was 4 of 13 on 3rd down. Green Bay 4 for 10. 5 penalties, 55 yards for the Texans. 4 sacks taken for 31. No lost fumbles, no interceptions, and 6 punts. 8 penalties, 55 yards for the Packers. 1 lost fumble, 2 interceptions, 5 punts, and they took 3 sacks for 25 yards. Time of possession is 31 minutes 17 seconds for Houston and 28 minutes 43 seconds for Green Bay. Closing line was Green Bay -3 over under 47.5. I took the Packers to win and to cover, but Green Bay only wins by 2, so I lost the ATS pick. Now I'm 4-1 straight up, 1-4 against the spread through 5 games. Next is probably one of the worst games on the Week 7 schedule. The Indianapolis Colts beating the Miami Dolphins 16-10. Indy is back over 500 with a 4-3 record, while Miami drops to 2-4. They're looking forward to getting Tua Tagovailoa back at QB next week. Individual numbers starting off with the Colts. Anthony Richardson returned and did not throw the ball well. 10 of 24, 129 yards. No touchdowns or interceptions. Very low QB rating of 59.2. He also led Indianapolis with 14 rushes, 56 yards. Tyler Goodson, who filled in once again at running back for the injured Jonathan Taylor, had 14 rushes, 51 yards, and a touchdown. Michael Pittman, 3 catches, 63 yards, 5 targets for the Colts receivers. Adonai Mitchell, this is the rookie from Texas. 2 catches, 30 yards on 3 targets. Alec Pierce, 2 for 15 on 5 targets. Matt Gay, 3 for 3 on field goals. Long was 52, 1 for 1 on extra points. Rigoberto Sanchez, 7 punts, averaging 48.1. Long was 55 with 1 touchback. Grant Stewart led the Indianapolis Colts defense with 19 total tackles, including 11 solo. Zaire Franklin right behind him. He had 16 total tackles and a forced fumble. Julian Blackmon and Nick Cross each had 9 total tackles. Jalen Carles, he had 5 total tackles, or 5 solo tackles rather, and a sack. Then you've got 7 total tackles and a pass defense by Jalen Jones. Seguin Olubi, 5 total tackles and a forced fumble. And Kenny Moore II, he finished with 5 total tackles and a pass defense for the Colts. For the Miami Dolphins, the game started with Tyler Huntley at quarterback. He was 7 of 13 for 87 yards with a touchdown and no interceptions, QB rating of 100.5, plus 5 rushes for 20 yards. He left this game early with a shoulder injury, and according to Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel, he tells reporters on Monday that it is too early to determine the severity of Tyler's shoulder injury. So we shall see in the coming week what happens with him. Devin Achane led the Miami rushing attack. 15 carries, 77 yards. Raheem Mostert, 11 for 50. Achane also had 2 catches for 8 yards on 3 targets. Leading receiver for the Dolphins is tight end Jonnu Smith. 7 catches, 96 yards, and a touchdown on 7 targets. And pretty much everyone else was held in check. Alex Ingold had 1 catch for 25 yards on his only target. Jalen Waddle had 1 catch for 11 on 2 targets. And Tyreek Hill had 1 catch for 8 yards on 2 targets. So both of them were non-factors in this one. Okay, there's a plane flying over my house. I don't know if you can hear that or not. But Jason Sanders, 1 for 2 on field goals. Long was 33. 1 for 1 on extra points. And Jake Bailey, 6 punts averaging 47.7. Long was 59 with 3 punts inside the 20-yard line. Alright, leading the way for the Dolphins defense is Jordan Poyer, 8 total tackles. Kyle Fuller, 7 total tackles and a pass defense. And those are the same defensive numbers for Jordan Brooks. Calais Campbell, 5 solo tackles. Zach Sieler, Sieler, he had 4 total tackles. And Deshaun Hand finishes with 3 solo tackles for the Dolphins. Total yards for Miami, 337, Indy 284. Passing yards favored Miami, 149 to 129. Rush yards also favored Miami, 188 to 155. The Dolphins finished with 18 first downs versus 16 for the Colts. Miami 6 of 15 on 3rd down, Indy 4 of 13. The Dolphins also 0 for 1 on 4th down. They had 6 penalties for 50 yards, 2 sacks taken for 12, 2 lost fumbles, no interceptions, and 6 punts. While Indianapolis had 4 penalties for 25 yards, no sacks taken, 1 lost fumble, 0 interceptions, and 7 punts. Time of possession, 31 minutes, 11 seconds for the Dolphins, 28 minutes, 49 seconds for the Colts. Closing line was Indy -3, over-under was 44. I took the Dolphins to win and to cover as the road underdogs, but they end up losing by 6, so I took the L in both picks. I am now 4-2 straight up and 1-5 against the spread. Next up is Saquon Barkley's return to MetLife Stadium as the Philadelphia Eagles demolished the New York Football Giants 28-3 to move to 4-2 on the season. The Giants will fall to 2-5. We'll begin with individual numbers for Philadelphia. Jalen Hurts, 10 of 14, 114, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, QB rating of 119.3. He now has 5 touchdown passes with no turnovers over his last 2 games, going back to Cleveland last week. Kenny Pickett filled in for him at the end of the game. He was 0 for 1 with a 39.6 passer rating. Hurts also added 7 rushes for 22 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. But the man of the hour was Saquon Barkley. 17 rushes, 176 yards and a touchdown, plus 2 catches, 11 yards on 3 targets. So that's a 187-yard day for the former Giant, and he is my offensive player of the week. Kenneth Gainwell, 13 carries, 56 yards. And 1 catch for 11 on his only target. A.J. Brown, 5 catches, 89 yards, and a touchdown on 5 targets. As for Devonta Smith, he had 1 catch for -2 and was targeted twice. Jake Elliott, no field goals, 4 for 4 on extra points. Braden Mann, 8 punts, averaging 52.4. Long 67, 1 touchback, and 2 inside the 20-yard line. Nakobe Dean led the Philadelphia defense. He had 11 total tackles and 2 sacks. Zach Bond had 6 total tackles. They did not list his injury, but he did get hurt in this game. Darius Slay, or Big Play Slay as we call him in Philly, 4 solo tackles and 2 passes defensed. Cooper DeJean, 4 tackles. Jalen Carter, 4 total tackles and 2 sacks. Rodrigo Blankenship, 4 tackles. Quinyon Mitchell with 3 total tackles. Nolan Smith with 2 tackles and a sack. And also you had sacks recorded by... You also had sacks recorded by Bryce Huff, Jalix Hunt, and Josh Sweat. Meanwhile, for the New York Giants, it was a bad day all around. Daniel Jones was 14 of 21 for 99 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, and a 77.3 QB rating. He would be benched in place of Drew Lock. 3 of 8 for 6 yards. He wasn't much better. His quarterback rating was 45.8. And not much to talk about with the ground attack for New York. Tyrone Tracy Jr., 6 carries, 23 yards. Daniel Jones, 5 for 20. Devin Singletary, 5 for 18. Malik Neighbors made his return after suffering a concussion a couple weeks back, but he was ineffective. 4 for 41 yards on 8 targets. Wan'Dale Robinson, 6 for 23 on 9 targets. And Tyrone Tracy added 3 catches for 9 on 3 targets. Greg Joseph, 1 for 1 on field goals, long from 38 and no extra points. Matt Hawk, 11 punts. That's right, 11 punts, averaging 47 yards. Long was 64. 4 inside the 20-yard line. Alright, Dexter Lawrence, the unquestioned leader on this Giants defense on Sunday. He had 5 solo tackles and 2 sacks. Tyler Newman, 9 total tackles. Deonte Banks, 6 total tackles. Bobby Okereke also had 6 total tackles. Trey Hawkins III, he finished with 4 solo tackles. Raheem Nunez Roches has 6 total tackles. Jason Pinnock, he finished with 5 total tackles. Brian Burns, 4 total tackles and a sack plus a pass defense. And Tomon Fox, he had 3 solo tackles and a sack for the Giants. Azeez Ojulari also had a tackle to go along, or a sack rather, to go along with his 3 total tackles. Total yards, Philadelphia 339, New York 119. Ouch. Passing yards, not a lot on either side. 70 for the Eagles and 43 for the Giants. But look at those rush numbers. 269 for Philadelphia, 76 for New York. And Philly had double the first downs as the Giants, 20-10. Philly wins big despite going 1 for 13 on 3rd down. Giants not much better, 3 of 14. And Philly a perfect 3 for 3 on 4th down. 6 penalties, 35 yards for the Eagles, 5 sacks taken for 44. No lost fumbles, no interceptions, and 8 punts. 5 penalties, 35 yards for the New York Giants, 8 sacks taken for 62. No lost fumbles, no interceptions, and 11 punts. So that's the key to success for the Philadelphia Eagles. Don't turn the ball over and play solid defense. Oh, and run the ball, and you'll win games. And that's exactly what the Eagles have done here. Time of possession, 35 minutes, 20 seconds, putting the Eagles in ball hawk territory. The Giants possessed the ball for 24 minutes, 40 seconds. Closing line, Philadelphia -3, over-under is 42. I took my Eagles straight up and against the spread. Won both picks. Makes me 5-2 straight up, 2-5 ATS. Alright, the Seattle Seahawks got back on track in Week 7 after beating the Atlanta Falcons at Mercedes-Benz Stadium 34-14. That ends a 3-game losing streak for Seattle as they move to 4-3. The Falcons are also 4-3 with the loss. Alright, looking at individual numbers for the Hawks. Geno Smith, 18 of 28, 207 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, 110.3 QB rating, plus 4 rushes for 15. Jackson Smith and Jigba also completed a pass for 35 and a 118.8 QB rating. Good on him. Kenneth Walker, 14 carries, 69 yards, 1 touchdown. Zach Charbonnet, 8 for 19 yards. Big news in this game is wide receiver DK Metcalf. He had 4 catches, 99 yards, and a touchdown on 7 targets. But he has been diagnosed with a grade 1 MCL sprain and is considered week to week. So that's a little bad news for the Seattle Seahawks. Back to the receivers. Noah Fant had 4 catches, 65 yards on 4 targets. Tyler Lockett, 4 for 25, or rather 4 for 45 on 6 targets. Kenneth Walker, 2 catches, 24 yards and a touchdown on 2 targets. And the aforementioned Jackson Smith and Jigba, 3 catches, 9 yards on 6 targets. Alright, Jason Myers. 2 for 2 on field goals, long was 59. 4 for 4 on extra points. And Michael Dixon with 4 punts, averaging 39 yards, long was 42. 3 of his 4 inside the 20-yard line. Okay. On defense, Kobe Bryant, that's C-O-B-Y, Bryant. He had 11 total tackles, a pass defense, and an interception. Julian Love pretty much followed suit. He had 9 total tackles, a pass defense, and an interception. Jerome Baker with 7 total tackles. Devin Witherspoon with 6 total tackles. Nehemiah Pritchett, he had 5 total tackles. And Josh Jobe, J-O-B-E, Josh Jobe, 6 total tackles and 2 passes defensed for the Seahawks. And for the Atlanta Falcons, Kirk Cousins, 24-35, 232 with 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions. Those will lose you games almost every time. He had a QB rating of 72.6. Now about Michael Penix Jr. making his unofficial NFL debut. 1 for 1 for 14 yards and a 118.8 QB rating. Bijan Robinson was a beast. 21 carries, 103 yards and a touchdown. And 3 catches for 40 yards on 5 targets. Meanwhile, Tyler Algier, 5 carries, 36 yards, 1 catch, 9 yards on his only target. Kyle Pitts, 7 catches, 65 yards on 9 targets. Drake London, 6 for 63 and a touchdown on 8 targets. Darnell Mooney, 5 catches, 46 yards on 8 targets. Younghoe Koo, 0 for 1 on field goals, 2 for 2 on extra points. And 3 punts at 44.3 yards on average for Bradley Pinion. His longest 47 and 1 punt inside the 20-yard line. Dee Alford and Justin Simmons both led the Falcons defense with 5 solo tackles and a pass defense. Grady Jarrett also with 5 total tackles. AJ Terrell, 4 tackles and 2 passes defense. Mike Hughes, 4 tackles and a pass defense. Caden Ellis was the leading tackler on this Atlanta defense. He had 9 total tackles for the Falcons. Excuse me. Okay, total yards, 385 for the Falcons, 339 for the Seahawks. Slight edge in passing yards goes to Seattle, 236 to 230. Rush yards favored Atlanta, 155 to 103. First downs also favored Atlanta, 22 to 20. The Seahawks were 4 of 11 on third down. Falcons 8 of 15. Seahawks 1 for 1 on fourth down. Falcons 2 for 2. 5 penalties, 42 yards for the Seattle Seahawks. 1 sack taken for 6. No lost fumbles, no interceptions, and 4 punts. 9 penalties, 72 yards for the Atlanta Falcons. 3 sacks taken for 16. 1 lost fumble, 2 interceptions, and 3 punts. Time of possession, 31 minutes, 8 seconds for the Falcons. 28 minutes, 52 seconds for the Seahawks. Closing line was Atlanta -3, over is 52. I did take the Falcons to win, but the Seahawks to cover. So that's going to make me 5-3 straight up. And that's going to be 3-5 in my ATS picks. If you're joining me late, you're watching the week that was, as we're taking a look at the individual and team statistical numbers from week 7 in the NFL. Also, I'm telling you how I did with every pick this week. And stay tuned until the end for my Week 8 power rankings. Alright, getting back to the recap, the last early game on Sunday was the Buffalo Bills destroying the Tennessee Titans 34-10. Now, they did fall behind early in this game, but really took the reins after falling behind 10-0. We'll start with the individual numbers for the host Buffalo Bills. Much better game for Josh Allen. 21 of 33 for 323 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Quarterback rating of 116.1. Plus 3 rushes for a yard. Alright. Ray Davis, 5 carries, 41 yards, and a touchdown. James Cook, 12 for 32, and a touchdown on the ground for Buffalo. Okay, this is Keon Coleman. He led the Bills receivers with 4 catches, 125 on 7 targets. Amari Cooper, who was just dealt by the Cleveland Browns, made his Buffalo debut with 4 catches, 66 yards, and a touchdown on 5 targets. Khalil Shakir, 7 catches, 65 yards on 7 targets. And Dalton Kincaid, 3 for 52 on 6 targets. Tyler Bass, 2 for 2 on field goals, long was 30, and 4 for 4 on extra points. And Sam Martin with 5 punts, averaging 39.4. His long is 46, 1 touchback, and 1 inside the 20-yard line. Dorian Williams had 10 total tackles to lead the Buffalo Bills defense. Terrell Bernard had 8 total tackles. Taron Johnson, 7 total tackles and a pass defense. Taylor Rapp, 7 total tackles. Balin Spector, he had 6 total tackles. Damar Hamlin, 5 total tackles, 1 pass defense, and an interception. Christian Benford, he closes with 4 total tackles and a pass defense. Dwayne Smoot, 4 total tackles and half a sack. Greg Russo, 5 total tackles and half a sack. And AJ Epinesa, 3 total tackles, a sack, a forced fumble, and a pass defense for the Bills. Over to the Tennessee Titans. Mason Rudolph started this game in place of the injured Will Levis. Rudolph was 25 of 40 for 215 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, QB rating of 74.5, plus 5 rushes for 13 yards. Tony Pollard had 16 rushes, 61 yards, 2 catches, 4 yards on 6 targets. Chig Okonkwo, I love that name. He leads the Titans receivers with 4 catches, 50 yards on 4 targets. You've got Tyler Boyd with 5 catches, 43 yards on 5 targets. And Calvin Ridley with 3 catches, 42 yards on 9 targets. Nick Westbrook-Akine had a touchdown catch for Tennessee. Nick Folk, 1 for 1 on field goals, longest 25, 1 for 1 on extra points, and Ryan Stonehouse with 5 punts, averaging 53.2, long punt was 62. And that's the book on Ryan Stonehouse. Jarvis Brownlee Jr., he closed with 6 total tackles and 2 passes defensed. Ernest Jones IV and Darrell Baker Jr. each had 5 solo tackles and a pass defensed. Kenneth Murray ended up being the leading tackler for Tennessee. He had 7 total tackles, and Quandre Diggs had 5 tackles. Amani Hooker had 3 total tackles and a forced fumble. Harold Landry with 4 total tackles and a pass defensed. And Jeffrey Simmons, he had 2 total tackles and a pass defensed. Total yards, Buffalo 389, Tennessee 289. Passing yards favored Buffalo 315 to 200. Rush yards favored Tennessee 89-74. Both teams with 18 first downs. Titans 6 of 16 on 3rd down, 1 for 2 on 4th down. And the Bills were 3 of 10 on 3rd down. 8 penalties, 52 yards for the Titans, 3 sacks taken for 15, 1 lost fumble, 1 interception, and 5 punts. 5 penalties, 40 yards for the Bills, 1 sack taken for 8, no lost fumbles, no interceptions, and also 5 punts. Time of possession, 32 minutes, 46 seconds for Tennessee, 27 minutes, and 14 seconds for Buffalo. Closing line, Buffalo, minus 9.5, over under 41. Took the Bills straight up and against the spread. I thought about switching this to my lock of the week, but I stayed pat with the Washington Commanders, and that's the game coming up next. I won both the straight up and ATS picks, so now I am 6-3 straight up, and that should be 4-5 ATS. 4-5. Okay, now to my lock of the week, which was the Washington Commanders at -8, and they won big and with ease, blowing out the Carolina Panthers 40-7 in our nation's capital. We'll begin with individual numbers for the Commanders. Jaden Daniels started the game. He was 2 for 2 for 6 yards with no touchdowns or interceptions. He had a 79.2 QB rating, but he would leave this game with a rib injury and did not return. We won't know until later this week if he'll be able to play Sunday in that big game with the Chicago Bears. But how about Marcus Mariota coming off the bench like Johnny Unitas? 18 of 23, 205 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a 132.8 QB rating. Plus 11 rushes for 34 yards. And before JD got injured, he had 3 rushes for 50. Brian Robinson was back on the field for Washington. He had 12 rushes, 71 yards, and a touchdown. And Jeremy McNichols had 7 carries, 42 yards. Austin Eckler, 4 for 17 rushing, 2 catches, 3 yards, and 2 targets. Terry McLaurin, 6 catches, 98 yards on 6 targets. Zach Ertz, 4 for 40 and a touchdown on 5 targets. And Olamide Zaccheaus, 4 catches, 25 yards on 6 targets. Austin Seibert, 4 for 4 on field goals. Long was 49, 4 for 4 on extra points. Tress Way with just 1 punt for 40 yards, and it landed inside the 20-yard line. Mike Sanderstill had 7 total tackles and a pass defense, pacing this Commanders D. Noah Egbenogini, I think. I don't know how you pronounce his last name. He had 6 total tackles. The ageless Bobby Wagner also had 6 total tackles. Jeremy Chinn with 6 total tackles as well. Frankie Louvu, 4 tackles and a sack. Deron Payne, 3 total tackles. Dexter Fowler Jr. had 2 solo tackles, a sack, and a pass defense, plus a 67-yard interception return for a touchdown. He is my defensive player of the week. And for the Carolina Panthers, Andy Dalton, another rough game for him. 11 of 16, 93 yards, no touchdowns, 2 picks, and a QB rating of 44, plus 2 rushes, 3 yards. Bryce Young came in and went 2 for 2, but for minus 4 yards and a 79.2 passer rating. The running Canadian Chuba Hubbard led Carolina's ground attack, 17 carries, 52 yards, and a touchdown, plus 1 catch for no gain on 1 target. Miles Sanders, 3 rushes, 34 yards, and 1 catch for minus 6 on 2 targets. Not much to talk about with the receivers. Ja'Tavion Sanders led the Carolina receivers with 6 catches, 61 yards on 6 targets, and Deontay Johnson was held to 1 catch for 17 on 3 targets. Eddie Pinheiro, no field goals attempted, 1 for 1 on extra points. Johnny Hekker, 5 punts, 50.4 average, long 62, 2 punts inside the 20-yard line. Charles Smith-Wade had 8 total tackles. Trevin Wallace, 7 total tackles. Same for Xavier Woods. Nick Scott had 6 total tackles. Chandler Wooten, 6 total tackles as well. J.C. Horn, 5 tackles and a pass defense. And Marquis Haynes Sr., 4 total tackles for the Panthers. Total yards, Washington 421, Carolina 180. 207 passing yards and 214 rush yards for the Washington Commanders, to 85 passing yards and 95 rushing yards for the Carolina Panthers. 26 first downs for Washington and 10 for Carolina. Panthers were 3 of 10 on 3rd down. Commanders 5 of 10. Carolina also 0 for 1 on 4th down. 6 penalties, 59 yards for the Panthers, 2 sacks taken for 4. No lost fumbles, 2 interceptions, and 5 punts. 8 penalties, 55 yards for the Commanders, 1 sack taken for 4, no lost fumbles, no interceptions, and 1 punt. Time of possession, the Commanders in ball hawk territory by just a few clicks at 35 minutes 5 seconds and 24 minutes 55 seconds time of possession for the Carolina Panthers. Closing line was Washington minus 10.5 over under 50.5, and they nearly got that total. This is my lock of the week, so I took Washington to win straight up, and I took the Commanders at the time at minus 8, closing at minus 10.5. I am now 5-2 with my lock of the week. Up next, you've got the Los Angeles Rams holding off the Las Vegas Raiders 20-15. LA moves to 2-4, while Vegas drops to 2-5. All right, individual numbers for the Rams. Matthew Stafford, 14 of 23, 154 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception. Not that great a game. Quarterback rating of 62.6. Kyren Williams had a good game rushing, 21 for 76 and 2 scores. Tyler Johnson, 4 catches, 57 yards on 7 targets. Tutu Atwell, he had 6 catches, 51 yards on 9 targets. And Colby Parkinson had 2 catches, 32 yards on 2 targets. Joshua Carty, 0 for 1 on field goals, 2 for 3 on extra points. Ethan Evans finishes with 6 punts at 43.5 on average. 52 is his longest punt, 1 touchback, and 3 inside the 20-yard line. Quentin Lake is the leading tackler for the Rams. He had 9 total. Cameron Curl, 7 solo tackles and 2 passes defensed. Troy Reeder, 9 total tackles. Byron Young, 6 total tackles. Michael Hoecht, I think Hoecht, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but he had 6 tackles, 1 sack, and a pass defensed. And then you had 6 total tackles for both Neville Gallimore and Christian Roseboom. Now about Kobe Durant. 2 solo tackles, a sack, a forced fumble, 2 passes defense, and an interception. Over on the Raiders side of the coin, Aiden O'Connell was the starter. He was 6 of 10 for 52 yards and a 73.8 pass rating, but he would leave this game early with a hand injury. So in comes Gardner Minshew, who finished 15 of 34 for 154 yards with no touchdowns and 3 interceptions. He had a passer rating of 21. That ain't good. Alexander Madison, 23 rushes, 92 yards. 3 catches, 31 yards on 3 targets. Brock Bowers, ho-hum, another good game. 10 catches, 93 yards on 14 targets. Trey Tucker, 3 catches, 36 yards on 8 targets. Daniel Carlson, 5 for 5 on field goals, long as 47. And no extra points. A.J. Cole, 4 punts, averaging 47.5 yards per punt. Long was 56. 1 touchback and 1 punt inside the 20-yard line. Isaiah Pola-Mao led the Las Vegas Raiders defense with 7 total tackles. Nate Hobbs, 6 solo tackles, a pass defense, and an interception. Trayvon Moehrig, 6 total tackles and a pass defense. Adam Butler has 6 total tackles. Robert Spillane, former Western Michigan Bronco, he had 5 total tackles and a pass defense. You've got 4 total tackles by both Divine Diablo and Jacorian Bennett. Max Crosby, 3 total tackles, a sack, and a pass defense for the Raiders. Total yards, Vegas 317, LA 259. Alright. 195 passing yards for the Raiders, 144 for the Rams. And 122 to 115 is rushing for Vegas. The Raiders had 20 first downs versus the Rams 15. Neither team good on third down. 3 of 15 for Vegas, 2 of 10 for LA. Vegas 1 of 1 on fourth down, and the Rams 0 for 1. 10 penalties, 80 yards for Vegas, 2 sacks taken for 11, 1 lost fumble, 3 interceptions, 4 punts. 3 penalties, 28 yards for the Rams, 1 sack taken for 10, no lost fumbles, 1 interception, and 6 punts. Time of Sorry about that, guys. Time of possession, Raiders 33 minutes, 48 seconds. Rams 26 minutes, 12 seconds. Closing line, LA -7, over-unders 43.5. I took LA both straight up and against the spread, but Vegas covers after losing by 5 points. So now I am 8-3 straight up, and now 5-6 in my ATS picks. Alright, this is the game that pretty much everyone around the country watched on Sunday. It was the Super Bowl 58 rematch, won by the 2-time defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs as they beat the San Francisco 49ers by a final score of 28-18. Kansas City stays undefeated at 6-0. They are the only unbeaten team remaining. The 49ers are back under 500 with a 3-4 record. Start with individual numbers for the Chiefs, and I'm going to spoil it for you a bit early, as neither quarterback did that well throwing the ball. Neither quarterback did well throwing the ball. Case in point, Patrick Mahomes, 16 of 27, 154 yards, no touchdown passes, and 2 interceptions. He had a quarterback rating of 44.4, easily one of his worst throwing games. But he did have 5 rushes, 39 yards, and a rushing touchdown. Kareem Hunt, 22 carries, 78 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And Mecole Hardman, 2 for 38 and a touchdown, plus 1 catch for 17 on 2 targets. Noah Gray led the KC receivers with 4 catches, 66 yards on 4 targets. Samaje Perine, 1 catch, 22 yards on his only target. Xavier Worthy, the speedy receiver out of Texas, he had 3 catches, 19 yards on 8 targets. And Travis Kelce, in witness protection for another week, he had 4 catches, 17 yards on 5 targets. No field goals for Harrison Butker, but he was 4 for 4 on extra points. And Matt Araiza, 3 punts, averaging 59.7. Long punt was 67 with 1 touchback. Justin Reid, no relation to Chiefs coach Andy Reid, just wanted to say that. He had 9 total tackles, a pass defense, and an interception to pace this Kansas City defense. Nick Bolton with 6 total tackles and a pass defense. Leo Chanel, 5 solo tackles, a forced fumble, and a pass defense. And then Chris Roland Wallace, 2 solo tackles, a pass defense, and an interception for the Chiefs. And again, as I said, both quarterbacks threw the ball poorly in this game. That brings us to Brock Purdy, 17 of 31, 212 yards, no touchdowns, 3 interceptions, quarterback rating of 36.7. That's not good. But he did have 8 rushes, 27 yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. Jordan Mason back in the fold at running back. He had 14 carries, 58 yards. 2 catches, 11 yards on 2 targets. George Kittle, 6 catches, 92 yards on 7 targets. Jacob Cowing, 2 catches, 50 yards on 3 targets. Brandon Ayuk, 2 catches, 23 yards on 6 targets. He suffered a knee injury. Many are fearing it's a torn ACL, but he will sit out the rest of 2024 as a result. That's a big blow for the 49ers. And Deebo Samuel went down in this game as well with an illness. We'll see if he plays Sunday night against the 49ers. Ricky Pearsall, second-round draft pick, made his NFL debut with 3 catches, 21 yards on 5 targets. All right, the 49ers are now on their 3rd kicker this season, Anders Carlson. Of course, he's the younger brother of Raiders kicker Daniel Carlson. He was 2 for 2 on field goals. Long was 55, 0 for 1 extra points. Mitch Wisnowski, 4 punts averaging 48.3. Long was 51, with 3 inside the 20. Big game in the tackle department for Malik Mustafa. 12 total tackles. Denormador Lenoir, 8 tackles, 1 pass defense, and an interception. Fred Warner, 8 total tackles. Charvarius Ward, 6 tackles and a pass defense. Devondre Campbell, 4 solo tackles. Jordan Elliott, I think, had 4 total tackles in this game. Okay, Malik Collins, 4 total tackles and half a sack. Nick Bosa, 3 total tackles and half a sack. Oh, sorry, I already let that Malik Collins. This is the one I want. D. Winters, he had 4 total tackles. And Leonard Floyd had 5 total tackles and a sack for the San Francisco 49ers. Total yards, 329 for the Chiefs, 310 for the Niners. Passing yards, San Francisco 209, Kansas City 145. Rush yards, Kansas City 184, San Francisco 101. First downs, 22 for the Chiefs, 19 for the 49ers. Chiefs 8 of 14 on 3rd down, 1 of 2 on 4th down. Niners 2 of 11 on 3rd down. That won't win you many games in this league. And 1 for 1 on 4th down. 4 penalties, 48 yards for Kansas City, 2 sacks taken for 9, no lost fumbles, 2 interceptions, and 3 punts. 6 penalties, 40 yards for San Francisco, 1 sack taken for 3, no lost fumbles, 3 interceptions, 4 punts. Time of possession, 35 minutes, 4 seconds for the Chiefs, barely putting them in ball hawk territory. In 24 minutes, 56 seconds for the 49ers, who led the NFL in average time of possession going into Week 7. Closing line was San Francisco minus 2.5. Over-under was 48. I had initially took the Niners in this game, but I'm glad I made switch to the Chiefs. Now I'm 9-3 straight up. And 6-6 in my ATS picks. All right, we're almost done with the recap. We're on to Sunday Night Football, where Russell Wilson had a big second half in his Steelers debut as Pittsburgh hammers the New York Jets 37-15. The Steelers are 5-2, while the Jets are 2-5. They're in a free fall right now. Individual numbers starting off with the Steelers. Russell Wilson, and he cooked in this game. 16 of 29, 264 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, QB rating of 109. 3 rushes, 3 yards, and a rushing touchdown as well. Najee Harris, 21 carries, 102 yards, and a touchdown. And Jaylen Warren had 12 rushes, 44 yards. Another big game for George Pickens. 5 catches, 111 yards, and a touchdown on 9 targets. Pat Freiermuth, 2 for 51 on 3 targets. Darnell Washington, 4 catches, 36 yards on 4 targets. And Van Jefferson also had a touchdown catch for the Steelers. Chris Boswell, 3 for 3 on field goals, long as 46, 4 for 4 on extra points. And Corliss Waltman, 4 punts at 46 yards a punt, long was 55, 3 inside the 20-yard line. Deshaun Elliott had 6 total tackles for the Steelers. Beanie Bishop Jr. also had 6 total tackles, plus 2 passes defensed and 2 interceptions. James Pierre, he had 5 total tackles and a forced fumble. Peyton Wilson was the leading tackler for Pittsburgh. He had 10 tackles, 4 solo, 6 assists. Minkah Fitzpatrick, 4 tackles, all solo. Joey Porter Jr., 3 total tackles. Cam Hayward, 2 tackles and a pass defensed. Larry Ogunjobi, 2 solo tackles and a sack. And Keanu Benton, he had 2 solo tackles and 2 passes defensed for the Steelers. Over to the New York Jets. Aaron Rodgers, 24 of 39, 276 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks, and a QB rating of 70. Breece Hall, 12 rushes, 38 yards, and a touchdown. He also led the Jets in receiving, 6 catches, 103 on 9 targets. Garrett Wilson, 5 catches, 61 yards, also on 9 targets. Adam Lazard, 4 catches, 58 yards on 4 targets. Devontae Adams, who was dealt from the Las Vegas Raiders, made his debut for the Jets at 3 catches, 30 yards on 9 targets as well. Tyler Conklin had a touchdown catch for New York. Greg Zuerlein, 0 for 1 on field goals, 1 for 1 on extra points. Thomas Morstead, 4 punts, averaging 44.3, long was 47. On defense, Jalen Mills had 8 tackles and a pass defensed. Javon Kinlaw had 6 tackles. Brandon Echols also with 6 tackles. Quincy Williams, 5 tackles. C.J. Mosley, 4 tackles. Will McDonald IV, 3 solo tackles, a sack, and a pass defensed. Jamian Sherwood, 9 total tackles for the New York Jets. Total yards, 409 for the Steelers, 323 for the Jets. Passing yards, slight favorite to the New York Jets, 269 to 260. Rush yards favored Pittsburgh, 149-54. The Steelers had 21 first downs, the Jets 17. New York 3 of 10 on 3rd down, Pittsburgh 5 of 14. Jets 1 for 2 on 4th down, Steelers 2 for 2. 5 penalties, 50 yards for the Jets, 1 sack taken for 7, no lost fumbles, 2 interceptions, and 4 punts. 4 penalties, 36 yards for the Steelers, 1 sack taken for 4, no lost fumbles, no interceptions, and 4 punts. Time of possession is 32 minutes, 9 seconds for the Steelers, and 27 minutes, 51 seconds for the Jets. Closing line is New York minus 2.5, over under is 40.5. I picked the Jets to win and the cover. I lost both picks. That drops me to 9-4 straight up and 6-7 in my ATS picks. Alright, we're going to wrap up this rundown with a look at the Monday night doubleheader. The game that most people watched saw the Baltimore Ravens beat the sliding Tampa Bay Buccaneers 41-31. As Baltimore moves to 5-2, they remain tied atop the AFC North with the Steelers. The Buccaneers fall to 4-3, and they remain tied atop the NFC South. Start with individual numbers for the Ravens. Lamar Jackson, 17 of 22, 281 yards, 5 touchdowns, and no interceptions. Near perfect QB rating of 158.1. Just another 2/10, and that would have been a perfect rating. Jackson also had 9 rushes for 52 yards. Derrick Henry, who was used very little in the first half, turned it up after the break. He had 15 carries, 169 yards, averaging over 11 yards per run. Rashad Bateman, 4 catches, 121 and a touchdown on 4 targets. Justice Hill, 3 catches, 44 yards and a score on 3 targets. Mark Andrews, 4 grabs, 41 yards, 2 scores on 4 targets. Derrick Henry, also with the 169 yards rushing, had a catch for 13 for a touchdown on his only target. Justin Tucker, 2 for 2 on extra points, or rather 2 for 2 on field goals, his longest 52, and 5 for 5 on extra points. Jordan Stout with just 2 punts, averaging 43.5, long was 57 with 1 touchback. Roquan Smith, impressive game in the tackle department. He had 18 total tackles, 11 solo, and 7 assists, plus a forced fumble. Kyle Hamilton, 11 total tackles and a pass defense. Eddie Jackson, he had 8 tackles in this game. Trenton Simpson also had 8 tackles. Ardarius Washington, 6 total tackles and a sack. Going down the list here. Adafe Owe, he had 4 total tackles and a sack. Marlon Humphrey, 2 tackles, 2 passes defensed, and 2 interceptions. He did lead this game with a knee injury and did not return. For the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Baker Mayfield, 31 of 45, 370 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and a 97.5 QB rating. And 5 rushes for 22 yards on top of that. Rachaad White, 10 rushes, 40 yards. Sean Tucker had 5 rushes, 29 yards. And Bucky Irving, 9 carries, 23 yards, and a touchdown. And 3 catches, 54 yards on 3 targets. Alright, Cade Otton was the leading receiver for Tampa. He had 8 catches, 100 yards on 10 targets. Rachaad White, 6 catches, 71 yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns on 6 targets. Chris Godwin, 7 catches, 65 yards on 9 targets. He dislocated his ankle late in the game on Monday night, and he will undergo surgery on that ankle later this week. He will be out the rest of the season, so that sucks for the Buccaneers. Mike Evans held to 1 catch, 25 yards. He suffered a hamstring injury in the first quarter. And Evans had 3 targets in the game with 1 catch for 25 yards and a touchdown. And chances are Evans may not return before week 11. So we're talking into November here. And Godwin is out for the rest of the season, which again is very, very bad news for this Tampa Bay team. Chase McLaughlin, 1 for 2 on field goals. Long was 23, 2 for 2 on extra points. There we go. Trenton Gill, third-year punter out of North Carolina State. He had 2 punts averaging 46.5, his longest 52 with 1 inside the 20-yard line. Antoine Winfield Jr. really didn't have that good of a game. He had 10 total tackles and a sack, but he really didn't play all that well. Yaya Diaby, 5 solo tackles and a sack. Tyreek Funderburk, half 5 total tackles. Zion McCollum also had 5 total tackles, as did Kalijah Kancey. KJ Britt closed with 6 total tackles. Joe Tryon Shoyinka, that sounds good coming off the tongue, doesn't it? He has 4 tackles. And Levante David, 2 solo tackles and a pass defense. Lot of offense in this game. Total yards 508 for the Ravens and 481 for the Bucks. Tampa held the edge in passing, 356 yards to 264. The Ravens nearly doubled up Tampa Bay in rushing, 244 to 125. Tampa Bay had more first downs than Baltimore, 28 to 22. The Ravens just 3 of 8 on third down. The Bucks were an impressive 11 of 17. And both were 1 for 1 on fourth down. 9 penalties, 85 yards for Baltimore, 2 sacks taken for 17. 1 lost fumble, no interceptions, 2 punts. 8 penalties, 75 yards for Tampa Bay, 3 sacks taken for 14, no lost fumbles, 2 interceptions, and 2 punts. Time of possession, ball hog territory for the Bucks, 35 minutes 5 seconds versus 24 minutes and 55 seconds for the Ravens. Closing line, Baltimore -4, over under 51. Took the Ravens straight up, but I took Tampa with the points, and that was a foolish decision. But I am 10-4 straight up now, and 6-8 with my ATS picks. And the last game we'll look at is the Arizona Cardinals, doing just enough to beat the Los Angeles Chargers 17-15 and move to 3-4 on the season. As for the Chargers, whose defense has not allowed more than 20 points all season, they fall to 3-3. Start with individual numbers for the Cardinals. So-so game for Kyler Murray, 14 of 26, 145 yards, 1 passing touchdown and an interception, QB rating of 67. 6 rushes, 64 yards, and a rushing touchdown. James Conner led Arizona in both rushing and receiving. 19 carries, 101 yards, 2 catches, 51 yards on 4 targets. Trey McBride, 5 catches, 51 yards on 7 targets. Marvin Harrison Jr., 3 catches, 21 yards on 6 targets. Michael Wilson, 1 for 15 on 3 targets. And Greg Dortch the Torch had a touchdown reception for the Cardinals. Chad Ryland, 1 for 1 on field goals, long was 32, 2 for 2 on extra points. And Blake Gillikin, 4 punts, averaging 44.5 yards per punt. Long was 54. All 4 punts inside the 20-yard line. Okay, Max Milton, second leading tackler on the team. He had 9 tackles, a forced fumble, and a pass defense. Pretty good game for him. Budda Baker, 8 total tackles. Garrett Williams, he finishes with 5 total tackles and a pass defense. Kazir White was the leading tackler for Arizona. He had 10 total tackles. Jalen Thompson had 5 total tackles. Starling Thomas V, 5 total tackles and a forced fumble. And Naquan Jones, he closes with 2 solo tackles and a sack for the Arizona Cardinals. For the LA Chargers, Justin Herbert, 27 of 39, 349 yards, no touchdowns or interceptions, and a 97.1 QB rating. J.K. Dobbins was out to 14 carries, 40 yards. Herbert added 2 rushes for 8. Leading receiver for LA is Will Dissly, 8 catches, 81 yards on 11 targets. Josh Palmer, 4 for 63 on 5 targets. Ladd McConkey, 5 for 46 on 7 targets. And Simi Fehoko, 3 catches, 45 yards on 6 targets. Cameron Dicker, also known as Dicker the Kicker, 5 for 5 on field goals, longest 59, which is a career high, and no extra points. J.K. Scott, 2 punts at 37.5 yards on average, long was 39 with 1 inside the 20-yard line. Good game for rookie Cam Hart out of Notre Dame, 7 tackles, 1 forced fumble, 1 pass defense. Derwin James, 8 total tackles. Dayon Henley, 4 solo tackles and a pass defense. Alohi Gilman, he had 5 total tackles. Otito Ogbonnia. There we go. Ogbonnia. Nigerian born. He had 4 tackles. And Khalil Mack had 3 total tackles and 2 passes defense for the Chargers. Total yards, Chargers 395, Cardinals 326. Passing yards 336 to 145 for LA. Rush yards 181 to 59 Arizona. 22 first downs for the Cardinals, 20 for the Chargers. LA 6 of 14 on third down, Arizona 2 for 7. Fourth downs, LA 1 for 1, Arizona 0 for 1. 5 penalties, 57 yards for the Chargers, 3 sacks taken for 13 yards, 2 lost fumbles, both early, no interceptions, and 2 punts. 3 penalties, 15 yards for the Arizona Cardinals, no sacks taken, no lost fumbles, 1 interception, and 4 punts. Time of possession, 34 minutes, 14 seconds for the Chargers, putting them on the brink of ball hawk territory, just missing out though. 25 minutes and 46 seconds for the Arizona Cardinals. Closing line was LA -1, over under was 44.5. I took the Chargers both ways and lost. So for the week, I finished 10-5 straight up and 6-9 in my ATS picks. Okay, now that the rundown is finished, let's jump into our Week 8 power rankings. And there is a little bit of movement this week as opposed to last. So let's get into it. The bottom 3 teams remain the same. The Carolina Panthers at number 32. The New England Patriots at number 31, and the Cleveland Browns at number 30, all 3 teams with 1-6 records. The Panthers visit Denver in Week 8, while the Patriots host the Jets, and the Browns host the Old Browns, aka the Baltimore Ravens. The New York Giants fall to number 29. They are 2-5, and they play the Steelers in Pittsburgh on Monday Night Football. The 1-5 Tennessee Titans hold tough at 28. They are in Detroit against the Lions. The Jacksonville Jaguars at 2-5 move up a couple spots to number 27. They're home to the Green Bay Packers. The Miami Dolphins slip one spot to number 26. They are 2-4. And they get the Arizona Cardinals and Kyler Murray on South Beach this coming weekend. The Las Vegas Raiders also down a spot to number 25. They are 2-5, and they have Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs coming to Sin City in Week 8. Up 2 spots to number 24 are the Indianapolis Colts at 4-3. They are in Houston for a rematch with the Texans. At number 23, dropping 3 spots from last week, the New Orleans Saints at 2-5. They play the Chargers in LA this week. The Arizona Cardinals hold steady at number 22 with a 3-4 record. They visit the Miami Dolphins this week. The 3-4 Cincinnati Bengals are up 2 spots to number 21. They're home to the Philadelphia Eagles, who have been playing very well on defense lately. Down 3 spots to number 20 after that embarrassing loss to the Steelers, you got the New York Jets at 2-5. They're in Foxborough to face the New England Patriots. Number 19, same spot as last week, the LA Rams at 2-4. They host the Minnesota Vikings on Thursday Night Football. Number 18, same spot as last week, the Dallas Cowboys, 3-3. They face the 49ers out on the Bay on Sunday Night Football. Up 4 spots to number 17, tied for the biggest jump this week, is the Denver Broncos at 4-3. This week they host the lowly Carolina Panthers. At number 16, slipping a spot from last week, the LA Chargers at 3-3. They get the free-falling New Orleans Saints at SoFi this week. Down 2 spots to 19 are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 4-3. They host a rematch with the Atlanta Falcons, as Tampa's looking for revenge from Week 5. The San Francisco 49ers drop 3 spots to number 14. They are 3-4. They'll try to keep their season afloat, hosting the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday Night Football. Off the bye and up 1 spot to number 13 are the 4-2 Chicago Bears, who are in DC this week for the Washington Commanders. We'll see if Jaden Daniels plays or not. At number 12, tied for the biggest jump this week, up 4 spots, are the Seattle Seahawks at 4-3. They will host Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills this week. Meanwhile, down 4 spots to number 11 are the Atlanta Falcons at 4-3. They are in Tampa Bay again for a rematch with the Bucs. Cracking our top 10, up 2 spots to number 10 are the Philadelphia Eagles at 4-2. Tough test coming up with Joe Burrow and the Bengals in Cincinnati. The 5-2 Green Bay Packers move up 1 spot to number 9. They are in Jacksonville. The 5-2 Buffalo Bills are up a spot to number 8. They go to Seattle. And the 5-2 Washington Commanders also go up a spot to number 7. Home for the Chicago Bears, which will be my game of the week. The Houston Texans fall 1 spot down to number 6. They are 5-2, and they get the Colts. Taking Houston's spot at number 5 are the Pittsburgh Steelers, also 5-2. They'll host the New York Giants on Monday night. Down a couple to number 4 are the Minnesota Vikings at 5-1. They play the LA Rams at SoFi on Thursday night. The 5-2 Baltimore Ravens are up 1 spot to number 3. They play in their old home, facing the Cleveland Browns. The Detroit Lions move up one spot to number 2 with a 5-1 record. They get the defensive-minded Tennessee Titans. And the Kansas City Chiefs once again retains the top spot as the only undefeated left in the NFL at 6-0, and they are off to Sin City to face the Raiders. And that, my friends, is week number 7 of the week that was. I'll be back in about an hour or so, and I will give you the college football television schedule and the announcers for every game going into week number 9. So make sure you come back for that. Like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Ring the bell and get notified every time I go live. Big Al signing off. Thanks for watching and enjoy the pigskin. Peace out.